Hello, to everyone whom it may concern. This is the start of a video game review series, or a first impression series where I play video games for the sake of scrutiny and to answer one simple question. Will I be continuing to play said game, or will it sit forever in silence in my Steam library? Forever resigned to the garbage bin of history, to paraphrase Leon Trotsky. So what is the series called? I'm calling it Hours In. And because the review will be based upon the number of hours I've put into the game, and based on those hours, I'll be stopping or playing more of it. It's just that simple. Now, no more dilly-dallying. It's time to launch the first ever episode of Hours In. Hades starts off with an absolute banger of a song with no escape. Hades' main theme song, with the absolutely electrifying guitar notes that rumble through the entire screen, threatening to boost your bass levels through the roof. It is absolutely clear that you're in for a treat. The theme presents Hades himself as a character perfectly, intimidating, majestic, powerful, mystical, and awe-inspiring, all at once. All of these also being adjectives I would use for the entire game itself. But the character that we play throughout the game is Zagreus, not Hades, but his son. And this highlights how important Hades is as a character in the game, being the titular character and one of the main driving points of the story. Zagreus himself is a badass like his father. He starts out wielding the Stygian blade, a cool looking long sword with Zagreus' signature red laurels on it, an attention to detail that just permeates throughout the entire game on so many levels. This also applies to the story that Supergiant tells us through its characters and the gameplay. The main plot point of the game is that Zagreus, as a developing sort of demigod, is breaking out of the underworld in defiance of his dad, Hades. Eventually he finds out about Persephone, his true birth mother, despite him being told that Nyx, the goddess of the night, was his mother since birth. This causes Zagreus to want to find her and find out the truth of his past and his family's past. It's an understandable story. This further inspires Zagreus to continue his rebellious endeavor with the help of the Olympian gods, giving you blessings that make you stronger and give you upgrades. As you might expect, this comes with a lot of challenges, facing down foes and bosses of different varieties, many of which from Greek mythology. The game is detailed heavily with several bits of information about Greek mythology, the various different gods and goddesses, the architecture, the bosses like Lerni, the Bone Hydra, Megara and her two sisters who make up the three Furies, even satyrs, which are really annoying by the way. It all creates a cohesive and lovely glue that pulls everything together. You get immersed into the world rapidly and are stuck in it from the moment you enter the game until you exit the game. It all works, and it works brilliantly. On the topic of gods and goddesses, I love the fact that they have such a variety in terms of design and even ethnicity. They also each have their own distinctive personality, with every line being delivered with passion and character. All of them are concrete and lively. It feels like you're constantly having a dialogue with them, and everything is so interesting to listen to. Whether it's references to their history in Greek mythology or something plot related that moves the story forward. Also, you can pet Cerberus. Cute little doggy. Ultimately, Hades' story is told masterfully and tastefully, perfectly paced and spaced out, and the best part about it is it's told through the gameplay and the mechanics. Recent games like The Last of Us 2 have had a problem with ludonarrative dissonance, which is that their mechanics that they promote in the game don't necessarily make you enjoy the story, because there's just such a disparity between what you're experiencing visually from the story and what you're actually doing, which is meant to be fun. But in Hades, the more you play the game, the more characters you talk to, the more you learn about the narrative. It is an inherently satisfying cycle that occurs throughout the game. And in this area, I must also commend Supergiant for how much detail they put it in terms of writing, and how much voice acting the voice actors did. Nearly 70 attempts in new lines and bits of information are still being told, with nothing repeating. This speaks to the amount of passion and effort that the developers put in. That's just so much depth and so much meaning. You just can't help but fall in love with everything they put in it. On the surface, it may just look like a tale of gods and goddesses, demigods and demigoddesses, but it tells a deeper and more relatable story. A story of heartbreak and family turmoil, a story about a son and his father, a son and his mother, and forgiveness. It blends perfectly well with the chosen mythology and is brimming with personality and love. Gameplay is another area that I have to say Supergiant absolutely nailed this time. The feeling of the weapons in your hands, the swing of your sword, the sharp jab of the spear, the sound effects that ring out when you shoot your railgun, everything has an extremely polished shine to it that you can't help but notice. There's an immense amount of feedback that you feel when you attack or do anything in the game. Dashing, using your cast, abilities and specials, it all makes for an amazing experience. Again, 70 attempts in, I'm still not bored of anything at all, even builds that I've tried several times before. One of the core aspects of gameplay is blessings builds. In Hades you move from room to room, and upon clearing a room you're given a reward in different forms. Examples are extra health, money, level ups and blessings. These are your bread and butter rewards that will make you infinitely stronger. And I mean infinitely. There's some builds in the game that make the experience so easy or so much smoother that you can't help but bask in the glee of melting enemies or clearing rooms in a matter of seconds. This complements the different weapons, different weapon aspects with different play styles which you are encouraged to explore. Everything is unique. There's something to appeal to everyone. One criticism though that I've seen from people is that the game sometimes says graphical vomit, which is to say that a lot goes on the screen, especially when you get more and more boons and upgrades. I'd say I personally did not have that problem, but I have experience in competitive games like Overwatch and I've trained my attention span pretty well. So it might be a problem for some people. It's not a big criticism though. For me it doesn't take away from the experience at all. Because in fact when you get a certain boon, let's say you get a boon from Ares, your skill has a sort of red highlight and red tint. All your skills turn red, and that's a cool feature that I think, well, they don't really need to take out at all. The music is absolutely mind-blowing, as come to be expected from a Supergiant game. The instruments used are perfect. The melodies are hauntingly beautiful with hints of mystical wonder. Every track draws you in and keeps you hooked on listening to it. It complements what you're doing really well, whether it's traversing through the hot fiery rivers of Asphodel or facing down Theseus and Asterius, the champions of Elysium. Constantly found myself tapping my foot to the beat and the rhythm of each piece of the soundtrack. And oh my god, Orpheus and Eurydice have amazingly beautiful voices. I cannot describe to you how enchanting their voices are. You need to experience it yourself, because upon meeting Eurydice I couldn't help but stay in her room longer than I needed to, just to listen to her sing and finish her song. A related quest to compel Orpheus to start singing again, because he became unmotivated after whatever happened with his muse, Eurydice, which is his story. I don't regret helping him one bit, because just listen to this.
Stones.
I cannot talk right now, my friend.
Chaos seems to have taken.
They mentioned me, did they?
That's. Oh.
Your kindness toward...
I think if you.
I could listen to it for hours, and it even muffles the sound of his singing when you leave the room. That's so cool, and a detail that makes it feel so much more amazing. And I love you guys, Ashley Barrett and Darren Korb. You guys absolutely nailed it. Well done. Hades is a roguelite that thrives off of multiple playthroughs, and in fact it is meant to be difficult, especially when you first start with no upgrades. You thrust forward with your Stygian blade and hope to God, pun intended, that you can get through the enemies and move up the different regions. But it's all worth it, even if you die. Whenever I died personally, I relished it because I would be learning more and more about the game and furthering the story. Dying is a desirable outcome, as well as winning of course, but you don't have to be harsh on yourself at all if you die. You get permanent currency in the form of darkness that gives you permanent upgrades and different weapons and Titan blood to upgrade them. Eventually you will beat the last boss. And spoilers, it's Hades.
You're looking very stately there, Father.
The blade of the underworld.
There's not much to talk about here, I think. The settings and options they give are sufficient and it's standard. The game itself is very well optimized. I never noticed any drops in FPS or anything of the sort. I've not seen any complaints about this either, but if you're running on a potato, then yeah, maybe you want to tone down the settings a little bit. Will I keep putting more hours in? Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind that I want to spend hundreds of hours in the game. I knew that from the very minute the intro song played. I could tell how good of a game it was just from the few notes that were played. I also have been a devoted fan of Supergiant Games for a very long time, since their first game Bastion. It's been fun to see their development game from game to game, and I would say this game is their magnum opus. There's just so much passion, detail, blood, sweat and tears put into this game. It's bursting at its seams and screams for every single aspect to be explored and experienced. And these experiences I would not hesitate to recommend to anybody. Regardless of whether or not you're a fan of roguelites or these kinds of games, I don't have that much experience in roguelites either. This was my first, and I absolutely adored it. A problem I have to mention though is that this game has raised my expectations so much, it might just ruin my experiences with other roguelites due to how good this bloody game is. Also, just to mention, there's so much more to mention in this game that I haven't mentioned here. I could go on even longer, but I don't think either of us really want that. Just some honorable mentions are Thanatos, also the dating sim aspect of the game, interacting with cool characters like Dusa, the Gorgon with a feather duster, the hidden weapon aspects, meeting chaos, and just so much more. Alright fellas, it's the end of the review. I like to wrap up by saying go buy Hades. If you seem remotely interested in the game, just go buy it. Don't hesitate, it's incredibly cheap for its price tag. The price to value ratio is astounding. It will give you hours upon hours of memorable experiences and you will not regret it ever. I love this game, and Supergiant, in the name of Hades, I accept this blessing.